and welcome to the Tavern Chat Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Tenkar, your bartender in the OSR, your main proprietor at the Tenkar's Tavern blog. Discord server, all that crap. We're there. As I've said in other places and here, diversify your presence on social media. You don't know when something's going to go poof, like Google Plus, ample warning, or go poof, like Parler, no warning. Diversify, right? It's the only way. And that, again, it's not just if you're a content creator, but even if you are a content consumer. You want to make sure that you have all available means, and also it allows you to avoid things. If you don't like politics in your social media, I don't. You can learn which ones are more gaming focused. I think MeWe is pretty much less political noise than Facebook, but your mileage may vary. That's just my mileage. So, what are we going to talk about today? Well, before I delve into the DMG, Tim left a message about my observations on alignment in the Monster Manual. And it's been pointed out, I think the Gregor Grognard pointed out on social media, that there is, or it's also neutral with good in parentheses. So it applies across the board there. But the stated alignments were those five. And why was that? Again, as is mentioned on one of the social media, I think it was MeWe or Facebook. Yes, the Holmes Basic box set was supposed to be the introduction to AD&D, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Basic, advanced, right? Natural progression. Only thing is, somewhere between one and the other, the mission changed. So, but let's listen to Tim, and then we'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming.
Hey, Eric, I just listened to your podcast. I'm sorry, this is Tim Stone. I just listened to your podcast about alignments in the AD&D Monster Manual. And it occurred to me I've seen patterns like that before in computer programming. If the 9-point alignment system is an enumeration, as we would call, basically think of it as a list of possible values, then my question is it actually documented, and I haven't looked, and so I'm speaking extemporaneously here, is it that there are only 5 alignments actually used in the, and possibly 7? And I think you even stated that might be a bit of a stretch. Is it that only 5 alignments are being used, and it's just been noticed because somebody cataloged, hey, let me go through the list of, from A to Z, all of the alignments being used by in the AD&D Monster Manual, and I only see 5, or is it explicitly stated somewhere in the Monster Manual that there are only 5 alignments? I actually believe it's the former and not the latter, and it's an interesting observation bias that there are only 5, but it doesn't necessarily mean that at the publication of the Monster Manual that there weren't 9 and it just went unnoticed that nobody was using the other 4. I'm just curious if that's a possibility, because I haven't actually read to see, is it 5? Was it explicitly stated as such? And I actually suspect, as you pointed out, it might have been, you kind of touched on it. I don't think you actually came out and say it, but I think you started to see that as well. And maybe there was a bit of a publication, we'll call it, lack of editorial oversight in the Monster Manual itself. Be curious to find out and learn more about where the other 4 alignments are in the Monster Manual. Take care. Great listening to your podcast.
Well, Tim, as I stated, AD&D was really supposed to be introduced by the Holmes Basic Set. And the Holmes Basic Set had 5 alignments. So, in a way, the expansion was in the Monster Manual, where it was neutral with chaotic tendencies, lawful tendencies, good and evil tendencies, but not stated as total alignment, right? Not neutral good, not neutral evil. It was neutral with these tendencies, and I think that's interesting. But it also shows that from the publication of the Holmes basic set to the evolution of AD&D, like when the Munster Manual was released, it was still looked at as it's the second release in the series of AD&D, like the new D&D that we're giving you. Because the basic set, the Holmes basic set, well, that was supposed to be the first release, but that's not what happened, right? It also got retconned out of existence because they didn't follow the preordained plan, I guess. So what am I going to bounce around about today? Well, I'm going to look at thief abilities, but I'm not looking at thief abilities in the player's handbook. I'm looking at thief abilities as Gary gave us further details on it, and some of it is pretty much annoying because, in retrospect, it's like, huh? So, roll of the dice for any thief function must be kept absolutely secret, so the thief or similar character does not know the results, which means that as a DM, you're rolling for the thief, or as I often used to do, I'd have the player roll their dice behind my screen, so I could see the results, they couldn't. Now we're going to go through these abilities here, because backstabbing, which, by the way, is mentioned as later on as one of the most abused abilities, gets all of one sentence, well, two sentences. Opponents aware of the thief will be able to negate the attack form. Certain creatures, Audiog, slimes, molds, etc., either negate surprise or have no definable back, thus negating the ability. So, here, according to this, if you have surprise, it can be inferred that you can get a back zip. Okay. Or if you have to have it back. Or how else? Right? Well, if you're not noticed, how can your thief be not noticed? We'll get to that later. Picking pockets, failure allows additional attempts. So that's interesting. Okay. The victim might notice and allow the thief to operate anyway in order to track him or her back to their place he or she uses as headquarters. Up to 2 attempts at picking a pocket can be made during a round. I didn't even realize that. However, we know they never use pickpockets because the thief's chances of successfully picking a pocket were abysmally low. So why do it? We usually use it something like they wanted to do a sleight of hand type of deal. They weren't picking a pocket. They were gonna, pocket a coin from a table or grab a document from a desk, and that was what we defaulted to. Opening locks. The act of opening the lock of picking the lock to be open can take from 1 to 10 rounds, depending on the complexity of the lock. As a rule, most locks will take but 1d4 rounds of time to pick. But now complexity doesn't change your chance of picking a lock, just potentially makes it longer. I used to make locks more complex and lower the thief's chances, but again, we were house ruling, we just didn't call house rules. Finding and removing traps. Use the time requirement for opening locks. Time counts for each function, finding and removing. Now, we used to do find and remove as a single roll. You found it, you tried to remove it, or you didn't find it, and obviously, usually you found it later by stepping on it or tripping it. Small or large traps can be found, but not magical and magically hidden traps. Move silently. Silent movement is the same as normal exploratory movement. Now, that's 12 inches per round. It's 120 feet. That's how fast a party is going to move when they are mapping. I guess you shouldn't have your thief be the mapper in that case. 12 feet, not 12 inches, 12 feet per round. So that's actually, in game terms, that's, I guess, 1.2 squares on your graph paper. Oy. As the thief creeps up, croodles. I've never seen the word croodles until now. I'd love to hear from anybody, any of my listeners, where Croodles is part of your vernacular. Maybe it's a Midwestern deal. I've never heard it. Upon the area or victim or whatever, do not inform the thief that his or her dice score indicated a lack of success at this attempt to stealth. If that is the case, he or she thinks the movement is silent, and the monster or other victim will inform the character of his or her misapprehension soon enough. I'm not 100% solidly linked on that. I would say if the thief was within, say, 10% of their success chance, they'd know, listen, you scuffed your foot, you might have revealed yourself. If they totally blow it, yeah, they think they did great. But, again, that was the ends improvising. Move silently. As plainly stated in the player's handbook, this is never possible on direct or even indirect observation. If the thief insists on trying, allow the attempt and throw the dice, but don't bother to read them, as the fool is obvious as a coal pile in a ballroom. Likewise, if a hidden thief attempts movement while under observation, a proverbial jig is likely up for him or her. Naturally, a creature closely pressed in melee is not likely to bother looking for some thief not directly in the line of sight, but if vision would normally extend to the thief's area of activity, then observation rules apply. Unobserved attempts to hide in shadows must likewise stand the hazard of the dice roll. A score greater than the required number shows that the character's ability is not on par with his or her intent, and although he or she thinks hiding has been successful, the creature looking in that direction will notice a suspicious outline, form, or whatever. Note also that a thief hiding in shadows is still subject to detection, just as if he or she was invisible. Now, here's something to note. Okay? What is, again, I wish Gary would come out and state it. So if you're a thief that's not engaged in combat and you're not directly engaged in it, so you're probably not in your opponent's general sight, they're focused, you can probably hide in shadows. And then the next round, maneuver to get yourself in as a backstab, assuming that you make your hide in shadows. That's how we played it, and you would think that would be expanded upon here, but it's not even touched upon. But hey. This is pretty, hearing noise, this is pretty straightforward. The thief, just as any other character, must take off helmet or other obstructing headgear in order to press his or her ear to the door surface in order to hear beyond. Ear seekers, right? This is where ear seekers came from, just to discourage players listening to every door or every wall. I am surprised they don't tell you how long they have to listen for, but climbing walls, this is probably the most abused thief function. Although hiding in shadows vies for the distinction. Again, I would say that backstabbing, depending on how you looked at it, was either the most abused or underused, because its ability to come into play was often not there. Or it was abused because you allowed it to come into play way too often. It's something that really should have been addressed. It's got the least amount of wordage, aside from, I think, opening locks and finding and removing traps of any of this stuff. And it's in my mind, we were always like, oh wow, if you can do double damage to the backstab. Really think about it. How often, as the rules are written, are you getting a backstab? You had to really, I guess, I'm not saying push it, but you had to figure ways to make the rules work for you. And for us, it was, oh, my thief's not going to engage in combat, and I'm going to try to maneuver myself out of direct eyesight so I can hide in shadows, so then I can move in for backstab next round. Anyway, back to climbing walls. The ability to climb walls is something which is acquired through training and practice, just as are most of the other functions of the thief. The rate at which vertical or horizontal movement is possible depends on the texture and other conditions of the surface. Then we have a chart. Slightly slippery reduces surfaces double chance of slipping and falling. Slippery surfaces make chance of slipping and falling 10 times more likely. Be certain to check each round of vertical or horizontal movement for chance of slipping and falling. Surfaces which are inclined inwards move towards greater degrees of difficulty. A non-slippery one being treated as slightly slippery, and a slippery one being virtually unclimbable. Surfaces inclined away from the perpendicular on an outward. This I feel like I need my protractor for this one. Surfaces inclined away from the perpendicular on an outward angle. Oh my god, I'm confused already. May be treated as either a better surface condition or a rougher texture, if the degree of incline is sufficient to make climbing easier. Most dungeon walls will fall into the fairly rough to rough category. Some will be non-slippery, but most will be slightly slippery due to dampness and slime growth. Oh, because the walls are either very smooth, fairly rough with ledges and many projections, and then non-slippery, slightly slippery, or slippery. We never really went into all that, I guess. You just made your climb wall check, and unless the wall was specifically noted to be like, oh, these walls are made of volcanic glass, and I'm sorry, but you probably won't have much of a chance to climb it. Or they were so easy to climb that I was like, just don't roll 00 into your first level thief, because any Tom, Dick, or Harry can climb this. So, in any case, like I say, it stuck out to me. You can kind of have an idea of what rules were, of what abilities of the thief were being used and what ones weren't. Obviously, his players were all climbing walls, okay, because that was really important to Gary to explain. And hiding in shadows was obviously coming up a lot, but I guess backstabbing wasn't. Just, observations and inferences, and I could be totally fucking wrong, but hey, that's the point of this. All right, folks. On that note, we are still in the midst of the world of the pandemic. Please, common sense. Common sense rules the day for actions to keep yourself, your family, your friends, your loved ones healthy and safe. It's important. Yay, pandemic. Boo, pandemic. Be safe, be well. God bless you all. Roll your dice and roll them well. Maybe relatively soon start returning to the world of physical space and physical conventions and such. But until then, tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern, at youtube.com/Eric Tenkar, ERIKTENKAR. That is the live stream for Talking Crit, which will be up here later on Wednesday night. But that's Bad Mike Battleato from North Texas RPG Con, and myself will be talking about current events in this hobby that we love. And it's also day 12 of OSR Christmas. I'm going to be wrapping up OSR Christmas, and I'm going to do so in a pretty large manner. So we're going to be giving away some drive-through RPG Now gift certificates. At least $100 of gift certificates in total value will be gifted. At least, maybe it'll be 200. I don't know yet. The more people that come in to watch us live and participate in the comments, because that's how you get involved, right? If you want to be a chance to be gifted, you got to be in the live stream, watching the live stream, and commenting, because we work off your comments. This is going to be for the big bucks, all in. Big money. So I'm not giving stuff away. It's your money anyway. It comes from the community. Really, your affiliate dollars. This is your affiliate dollars at work. All right, folks. On that note, knock on wood, I will see you all, or you will see me, or hear me tomorrow. Later, folks.